Joining us now is Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Let's welcome Frank Zaccanelli.
Live from the Real News Studios in Dallas, Texas, welcome to the To Be Frank Show. Your host, Frank Zaccanelli, has been in the world of domestic and international business and professional sports for 40 years. And as a former minority owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, he's been asked to comment on current events in the national news for most of his professional career. But what he and many others are really looking for is a place to find just the facts. Welcome to the To Be Frank Show.
Live from Dallas, Texas, welcome to the To Be Frank Show, episode number 12. Didn't think I'd go this far, but we're going to go much further. It's been fun being the host of the show. My name's Frank Zaccanelli, and we are really excited about the viewership and the support that we're now getting for a show that is the sworn enemy to any kind of political ideology. We're trying to do everything we can to stay away from that. All you have to do is turn on your television and you can get to it. So we're trying to stay away from it. You can reach us at the To Be Frank Show YouTube, the To Be Frank Show Twitter, the To Be Frank Show LinkedIn, the To Be Frank Show Facebook, and the ToBeFrankShow.com. For, again, everybody that doesn't navigate like I can't navigate, you go to that one, the show's posted, and you get a chance to watch it. So we're really happy to be with everybody on this beautiful Monday from Dallas. And we're going to talk a little bit about some current events, but I want to let everyone know that we have a wonderful guest for today. His name is Tristan Ahumada. And Tristan is he operates Lab Coat Agents as its CEO. Tristan is from Southern California and has created the largest closed real estate Facebook group with over 300,000 members. So we're really excited about the interview with Tristan today. Going to talk a lot about how all this is affecting everyone's life and business. And so it's going to be very exciting. So I want to get to a couple of the talking points today. The first is really about our good friends, China. Okay? Now, I've been negative on this show to everything China. And there's a reason why. You know, my generation grew up in the Cold War. And for those of you that don't know what the Cold War was, it was a conflict between the United States and Russia. There were nuclear provisions that were involved in the conflict. Thank God nobody used them. But it was a détente, if you will. There was no discussions about anything. We didn't like them. They didn't like us. It was clearly before the age that we're in today with technology and everything else. And I'm going to talk a little bit about technology and how that has both been a tremendous addition to our lives. It is also a nightmare in our lives. And it's a nightmare to the security of our country. And we're going to talk some about that. But we read in the newspaper today, yesterday, the day before, that the Trump administration now has a problem with a company called TikTok. So let me tell you about who TikTok is. And TikTok is a Chinese video sharing service owned by a Beijing company and founded in 2012. Now, you say, well, what's wrong with that? What's the problem with TikTok? Well, the U.S. government is concerned that U.S. citizens' personal information is going to be going to the Chinese government. Now, we've taken a position on this show over and over and over. We have no problem with the people of China. The people of China are good people. It's the communist government that is, number one, the problem. Number two, broke the treaty that was signed on the Hong Kong acquisition, or reacquisition, if you will, in 1998. They've now completely tore up that treaty. The treaty was one country, two systems, which meant that Hong Kong was going to operate under a completely autonomous scenario to mainland China, okay? And so you get into a situation where every single thing that the Chinese have done and are doing, including and not limited to the coronavirus, where they lied through their teeth about that, okay? I get a big kick out of people that are on television that say, oh, don't call it the Wuhan virus or don't call it the Chinese virus. Where the hell do you think it came from? It didn't come from Idaho. It came from the Chinese. And they covered it up. And everyone has got to understand, they threw out all the journalists. They jailed doctors that wanted to talk freely and openly about it. Okay? And so it kills me that people in the media, and they're mostly liberal people in the media, we don't take sides, but mostly liberal people in the media, oh, well, we can't pick on China. You know, that's xenophobic to pick on China. We're not picking on the people of China, not on this show. We're telling you about the Chinese government. And the Chinese government lies right through their teeth almost in every single instance. So Mike Pompeo, who I happen to think is very qualified to be able to do his job, has now come down pretty hard on the company TikTok. Roll the tape.
We have news this morning that Microsoft has put on pause its plans to acquire TikTok, the U.S. operations of this video sharing app. Peter Navarro was with us last week on this program. Here's what he said about TikTok. I've got to get your take on this very popular app for young people. Here's Peter Navarro.
What the American people have to understand is all the data that goes into those mobile apps that kids have so much fun with and seems so convenient, it goes right to servers in China, right to the Chinese military, the Chinese Communist Party, and the agencies which want to steal our intellectual property. Those apps can be used to steal personal and financial information for blackmail and extortion. They can be used to steal business, intellectual property, and proprietary secrets.
What happened with TikTok, Secretary?
Well, here's what I hope that the American people will come to recognize. These Chinese software companies doing business in the United States, whether it's TikTok or WeChat, there are countless more, as Peter Navarro said, are feeding data directly to the Chinese Communist Party, their national security apparatus. Could be their facial recognition pattern. It could be information about their residents, their phone numbers, their friends, who they're connected to. Those are the issues that President Trump's made clear we're going to take care of. These are true national security issues. They're true privacy issues for the American people. And for a long time, the United States just said, well, goodness, if we're having fun with it or if a company can make money off of it, we're going to permit that to happen. President Trump has said enough, and we're going to fix it. And so he will take action in the coming days with respect to a broad array of national security risks that are presented by software connected to the Chinese Communist Party.
All right. So this isn't all made up, because here's the other side to this. We have found that the Chinese, through their companies, have been trying to steal intellectual properties from the United States for the last 10 years. This isn't like we're dealing with Sweden or Norway, a bunch of people that are fishing, drinking beer. We're talking about the Chinese, okay? And their track record is so awful and so bad that we get into a situation where they want to steal everything. They want to lie about everything. And again, I got no reason to pick on China. They come here and they completely manipulate every single thing in my own businesses. I see it in the EB-5 program, which is the pay-for-play immigration program where the Chinese come over here and they think they can do anything they want. And unfortunately, the United States government to this point has kind of let them do it. And I think it's time to put our foot down. Now, this is another area. Like I mentioned with the, Portland and Seattle and New York City scenario, okay, the lawlessness of that. Not the protests, the lawlessness. I think this is going to be a negative to the Democrats. I call out all the negatives to the Republicans, coronavirus 1, 1A, 1B, 1C. But the fact of the matter is, we're in a situation right now to where China is not our friend. They are not. And the Donald, I call him the Donald, he basically, took a position, I'm best friends with Mr. Xi, okay? Prime Minister Xi, Chairman Xi, whatever you want to call him. We're good friends. We golfed, we did. Don't say you're good friends with these guys. They don't care less about us. They want to steal everything that we've got. So I am at the To Be Frank show behind 100% Mike Pompeo's move. And don't forget, there was Huawei, there was WeChat, there was ZTF, there was all these different companies that are involved in some form of technology espionage. So it's not like, again, we're making this up. So I'm behind the effort to take China and put them in the proper perspective. And I'm very upset with the fact that they could have stopped a lot of this coronavirus around the world, and they didn't do it. So that's the position of the To Be Frank show. Let us hear from you if you disagree. Okay. The second segment is really about the coronavirus and its impacts on businesses, on workers. I mean, it's a huge story, okay? This is a gigantic story. And our guest today, Tristan Ahumada, is going to talk a lot about the changes that are occurring and the difference in the world that we live in today versus 6, 7, 8 months ago. Everybody is waiting for the moment that we're going to get back to where we were at Christmas time. I don't think we're going to get back there. And I don't think we're going to get back there in some sectors ever. And that's the big issue as it relates to now. How are we in the business world transforming our businesses, our workers, our lives around the coronavirus and some of the things that it has caused our lives to have changed? Roll the tape.
Google is letting its employees work from home for at least another year, a move that shows the tech industry is bracing for a long-term pandemic. Google CEO Sundar Pichai wrote in an email to Google employees on Monday saying that the company is, quote, extending its global voluntary work from home option through the end of June of 2021 for roles that don't need to be in the office. Now, that means that nearly 200,000 full-time and contract workers will stay on the smart working system. Google previously planned to reopen some offices for a limited number of employees starting July 6th, but later made that optional due to the worsening COVID-19 situation in the U.S.
As part of some of the things that I've done in my business career, I'm a real estate developer. And as a real estate developer, you look at marketplaces, you analyze marketplaces, and then you build buildings. And you build them based off of need, off of the market, off of where you think there's going to be opportunities for you once you build these buildings to lease the buildings. In today's world, I wouldn't want to own a lot of office buildings right now because what's happening, what you're seeing is you're seeing a dramatic shift away from the way that we did business. People are figuring out through technology that they don't have to be sitting in their office, that they don't have to be sitting next to somebody in their office, that they can do this work from home, that they can communicate via technology, via Zoom, via all the functions that are out there, and still maintain the ability to be able to do their jobs. That's the key to this whole transformation now. I'm excited that these employees can work remotely because what that means that they're still employed. They're still earning money. They're not on unemployment. It helps the economy. And I think these forward-looking companies like Google are going to be the absolute roadmap for companies and other companies as this pandemic continues to go down the road. I mean, You look today, Dr. Birx, we all know who she is. She's been on the Corona Task Force since the beginning. You know, you look all through the newspapers today. I mean, it's clear. She says that this thing is going to have a resurgence. You know, we're not anywhere near through with this coronavirus. And, you know, these are things that are going to have to be taken into consideration as it relates to the workforce and how and where they work. So we'll be talking a little bit to our guest today, and he'll have some additional insight in the real estate business about how all this comes together. All right, the third segment is a segment that I'm committed to on this show, and it's the Chicago crime scenario. And I want to roll a tape, and then I'm going to go unplugged for a couple minutes because I've come to the conclusion there's another problem in Chicago, and I want to call it out. So roll the tape.
Well, new crime numbers from Chicago police show that murders and shootings reported in July increased drastically from a year ago. Overall, though, crime in the city decreased. There were 105 murders last month compared to 44 reported in July of 2019. 406 shooting incidents were reported, and that is up from 232 last July.
You know, those statistics, you know, as a former employer of mine used to tell me, the numbers don't lie, Frank. You know, the numbers are what they are. You look at these murders, you look at the shootings. I've taken a position on this show, and I'm going to take it again today, that the Black Lives Matter movement should include places like Chicago, because those are African American lives that are being lost based on the complete chaos in certain pieces of Chicago. But here's my problem. This thing has been going on, as I mentioned, for a long time. This is not Mayor Lori Lightfoot's issue. It's not something she created. Donald Trump didn't create it. Barack Obama didn't create it. It's been there, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. It is a real form of systemic racism in the communities where the schools are bad, the economy's bad, there's no hope for the people. I mean, you go on and on and on. But here's my problem. What the hell are the businesses of Chicago doing about this problem? It almost appears to me that you sit back and you look at it, and they've taken the approach, and I think a lot of people in Chicago have taken the approach. Yeah, that's just on the west side and parts of the south side, but it's not a problem for a lot of people in Chicago. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is you're ignoring the problem. And I believe that businesses in the city of Chicago, businesses in the state of Illinois, should take a hard stand to fixing this problem. The way you're going to have to fix it, and I've said it on the show, you're going to have to go in and clean out the neighborhoods. You're going to have to get all the guns. You're going to have to get rid of the gangs. You're going to have to do all that. There's no way around that. You have to do that because it's gotten this bad. Now, once that happens, then you've got to rebuild these neighborhoods properly, okay? That's what the whole Black Lives movement is about for me as a non-African American, is about how do we move this culture forward? How do we move these neighborhoods forward? You know, the policing issue, that's being addressed, and it needed to be addressed. But what about the fundamental issues? What about those issues in the neighborhood on employment and schools and all these things? These people in Chicago, and I hate to say it, but the non-African American group in Chicago, it's almost like they've ignored this thing. That's what it appears to me. They just have ignored it. And they're not solving any of the problems. And I said that the Democrats, and I'm going to get into Joe Biden here in a minute, but I said that the Democrats are going to make an equal mistake that Trump made on the coronavirus. They're going to make it with the lawlessness in our inner cities, with not allowing for, if a federal building, this is just common sense, everyone. If a federal building is under siege, you bring federal agents in. This isn't brain surgery. This is simple, okay? You got a federal courthouse, they're going to burn the federal courthouse down, you bring in federal agents. Isn't that how it's supposed to work? But no, it's a photo op for this and it's a photo op for that. None of it makes any sense to me, okay? doesn't. But the politics are so thick that all of these issues, a lot of them are being ignored. The Chicago issue, let's quit ignoring this. I call out to the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, you got to be able to take Chicago in. You got to be able to take these things in. You got to be able to make this a part of the platform, because this is the core of the problem. Let's fix the immediate problem, and then we've got to get down to the core of the problem. So that's the way that I see it. But people in Chicago, businesses in Chicago, quit ignoring what's going on in your city. Okay. Our fourth segment is about Joe Biden, the vice president's picks that he's getting ready to make here. And he's getting ready to make these picks, I think, any day now. Okay? Now, Joe's still in the basement. We've talked about that. And there's some other issues as it relates to Joe that we're going to get into. But why don't we roll the tape, and then we can talk a little bit about some of the ancillary things as it relates to the Biden presidency.
Mr. Vice President, I want to talk a little bit about your VP pick. We're narrowing in on the time frame that you had identified as when you would make your announcement. Are you still targeting early August? And how many of these people, how many finalists do you have, and are you going to be able to meet with them in person because of COVID?
I'm going to try to figure out how to trick you all so I can meet with them in person. You got crews outside my house. I don't think it matters, actually. What I said was that I'm going to have a choice in the first week in August, and I promise I'll let you know when I do.
But will you get to meet with them in person, do you think?
Will I what? I'm sorry?
Will you be able to meet with them face to face?
Well, we'll see.
You're going to have to wear masks.
They will have to wear masks.
Will you get tested, do you think, if you have to do that for COVID?
I'm not prepared to say much more than that right
Okay.
now. Thank you.
All right. You know, again, the tape tells 1,000 words. That was one of the goofiest exchanges, I think, in the history of anything. I mean, I don't know if you really listened to that, but I don't know. You know, it's too much time in the basement. Let's get him out of the basement. Because, again, if he wins the presidency, he's going to be my president. I'm not telling anybody who I'm voting for personally, but this show takes no position on any of this. But that was goofy. All you got to do is watch it. Now, let me give you a list of some of the possibilities. You've got Kamala Harris, who everybody seems to think she's a senator in the U.S. Senate. Everyone seems to think she's going to be one of the front runners. Susan Rice, who was in the Barack Obama administration. Now, she's got some baggage, and they're going to have to explain away some issues with her. You got Val Demings, who's a Democratic congresswoman who's a former chief of police, who is a really smart congresswoman. You got Karen Bass, who's also a congresswoman. And then some say, you go back, you got Elizabeth Warren, and you got Gretchen Whitmer, who's from Michigan, okay? So you got a distinct possibility. I hate when anybody, especially a candidate, goes and says, well, I'm going to pick a woman. I'm probably going to pick an African-American woman. You know what? Pick the best person for the job, especially if you're Joe. I mean, Joe's getting up there in years. So pick the best person for the job. I mean, isn't that what this is supposed to be all about? Okay? Now, you've had an article that came out, and this is not being lost on anybody. It's not being lost that Biden basically is sitting in his basement, and there's Democratic operatives now that are advising him, don't even debate Trump. Just don't show up at the debates. Now, if that happens, it's going to be disaster number 23, okay? That's not going to work. It will never work, okay? You got to debate Trump 3 times. And the guy that did it's a guy by the name of Joe Lockhart, who's been around the Democratic Party. He wrote an op-ed, okay? This guy's a knowledgeable guy. There's no way you're going to get away with this, okay? They're getting away with it now because the media is allowing them to get away with it. But what I'm saying to you is we need transparency here. One thing about the Donald, right or wrong, he still goes up and takes the questions. Now, if he doesn't like the questions, he walks off the stage. You know, he's pissed off. It's whatever it is. But Joe's got to get out there. And this is the last thing I'll say about it. Joe still has to answer some of the questions about his family's operations. That's all I'm going to say right now, but there has to be an understanding as it relates to that. So we're going to keep our eye on it. We're going to keep our eye on the polls. We're not taking a position, and we're in a situation to where this is going to get real interesting. Okay. Our first guest today is an incredibly interesting businessman. His name is Tristan Ahumada, and he operates Lab Coat Agents as its CEO. And Tristan is from Southern California and has created the largest closed real estate Facebook group with over 300,000 members. And so we are ecstatic about having Tristan on the show today. Tristan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. It's a sunny day out here in Southern California, man.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
you've got the world by the you know what. All right, you're in Malibu,
Yeah.
California. You're taking it easy. You're on the 2B Frank show, and we're going to have a great time here talking to you about your businesses. So, tell us what is Lab Coat Agents? What does that really consist of, Tristan?
So Lab Coat Agents is, simply put, it's an education and media company for real estate agents. It started from something super simple, which was me talking about online lead conversion for real estate agents. And then it grew into its own world of people coming in and asking questions about how to run a business in real estate, what products to use, what tech is out there, what systems. And so now we're just the go-to place for any questions, education, and media for real estate agents.
Well, what motivated you? What was the factor that ultimately you sat back, and said, "Hey, I'm going to start this because it's really necessary. It can really help people." What was the factor?
Frank, that's a good question. I was speaking around the nation for Realtor.com, and I was speaking to large crowds all over in regards to the changing world that we were having with online leads at the time. And I was using their product and doing really well with it. And I kept on getting the same question, which is, well, how are you so successful doing online leads? What tech are you using? Help us out. So I thought, well, I'm going to create a blog out of it. And my wife said, no, you should do a Facebook group, right, to help people. And I said, what's Facebook? No, I don't think so. And so I ended up doing a Facebook group, right? So my wife was right on that part. And that was the motivation behind it. I wanted to help real estate agents out because I kept on getting the same questions over and over.
Well, has the COVID-19 pandemic, how has that affected your business? I would assume that your service is probably more valuable today than it might have been 6 months ago. Is that accurate?
You're very, very accurate. What happened is, as we were preparing for what to do next for 2020, like December, November of 2019, we were talking to different tech companies out there to see what we could do. So I run Facebook's real estate advisory board for the whole nation. And we were talking with them and seeing what's next for you guys. What can we do on this end? And we were prepared for going all in, virtually helping agents and educating them, and as well as my team, because I run a team out here and I own a part of a brokerage out here as well. So what happened when COVID hit, everybody started freaking out on the real estate side, and we went the opposite. And we're like, hey, you know what? Let's bring in the clarity that real estate agents are going to need. Let's bring the solutions, because we've already been running it like this for years. And so we were the solution. We were the first ones to react to what we needed to be doing as real estate agents. And then all of a sudden that propelled us to just a higher level because we were ready to go, Frank. So that's
I'll
that's
tell
how it
you.
affected them.
Yeah, no. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, but the thing is, You understand the whole real estate world. So what happened for a period of about a month to a month and a half, we didn't know what was going to happen in real estate, right? It was kind of dead. We didn't know we could sell property. We didn't know the processes. We didn't know how deadly this thing was or wasn't. And so a lot of people were freaking out as to what was going to happen. So what we did is we talked to some of the leading economists in the nation and brought them into the show and started talking to them and saying, okay, what is really happening here? And so we brought in a lot of clarity with them, and they said, hey, look, the recovery should look like a V, right? If we have another lapse in the future, then it could come back down like a U. And so we kept on telling people this, and look what happened. In the last month and a half, the real estate market's been so hot in all the metropolitan areas, people haven't even seen this much business before when it comes to real estate on the real estate side for agents. But it's been crazy.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I was going to say before I interrupted you, the situation in Dallas is actually pretty active. I talk to home builders. I have several home builders that are good friends of mine. And I talk to, just general real estate people. And it's interesting that there really hasn't been a hiccup. Actually, pricing has stayed about the same here in Dallas, and activity levels have stayed about the same. And the interesting part of that is that I've asked, okay, someone explain to me why. And the answers I keep getting back is that mortgage rates are still very, very, very attractive. And people are coming out of the inner cities now in apartments that are ultimately now moving to the suburbs so they can have a little bit more security, a little bit more room, a little bit more fresh air, if you will. Because Tristan, several years ago, 5 years ago, it really started here in Dallas. Things started pushing directly to the inner city because of traffic problems and all of that. In L.A. overbuilt downtown by a factor of probably almost 2 to 1. When I saw all that development down there, I said, let me tell you, they're going to need a lot of people to figure out how they fill these buildings. So here in Dallas, Tristan, you've had a little bit of a migration now because of the coronavirus back to the suburbs. Do you see any of that?
Oh, so true. Especially here in Los Angeles, we're seeing people move outward a lot more. And a lot of the homes that we're listing right now are from people that are either moving out of state for California or moving up to the outer areas like the San Fernando Valley, Ventura County, or other areas outside of Los Angeles. But here's the thing. You brought up a really good point that isn't talked about much, and that's the interest rate. So if we go back to like the 70s and the 80s, where the interest rates in the 70s, they were at like almost 9% average. 80s, they were almost 13% average. And we've never seen interest rates being at 2.99. That's what we're averaging over the last few weeks here, which is
it's unbelievable. And the cost of money, Tristan, is almost zero. I'll tell you a quick story. I got a few years on you. I graduated, got out of college, and on television, every night they would post what was called the misery index. This was 1978. And the misery index, it was posted every night, was the interest rates attached on to the inflation rate. Guess what the misery index was, Tristan? Take a wild guess in 1978.
Dude, I don't even know.
31%. Interest rates were 18%, and inflation was at 13%. I can't make these numbers up. I mean, you're coming out of college, and all of my contemporaries and everyone else, you basically, watch the television. That's back before even cable television. And you got the nightly news, and the first thing they start out with is the misery index. So things have come a long way. It really has come a long way. But here's another question for you, and I think this is important for our viewers at the To Be Frank show. What do you see now happening the next 6 to 12 months? Because, you have your hand on the pulse. I mean, you talk to people all day, every day. What are you seeing happening in the next 6 to 12 months in the business world, in the real estate world, with the COVID-19 being still an unknown quantity in terms of where we're going to end up with this? I don't think anyone knows. Are we going to have a relapse? Are we not going to have a relapse? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? When's the vaccine coming? But what do you see the next 6 to 12 months that could help the viewers?
What I do see happening, and then I'll give you some data too, but I do see us as a nation adjusting, living the world that we're living in and progressing further. So I see us making adjustments to be able to work in the world that we live in. And unfortunately, some people haven't adjusted and they're saying, no, this is going to be over. But the world that we live in has permanently changed. So once people adjust to that, they'll start living it forward. But here's some stats that I thought were important to go over, only because it isn't often brought up. And so Black Knight, Black Knight, they have a lot of data. And this is important because we're talking about forbearances here. Out of all the active forbearances, which are past due for their mortgage payments, 77% of them, this is a high number, 77% have at least 20% equity in their home.
Right.
That's massive. It's not like the last time around where people keep on bringing it up to me, well, what's going to happen to all those people that are not paying, and what's going to happen to the forbearances? Let's say they just can't pay after. Well, the difference is they can actually sell their home. They won't go into foreclosure for the most part. So that changes the immediate future of where we're in. Let's say a year from now, right? 2021, same time period. I really think the next year is really going to depend a lot on the election. That's just what I see, Frank. What do you think on that, man?
Well, I lived through with an investment real estate development company, 2005, 2006, and 2007. And Tristan, I couldn't buy anything. We couldn't do anything. The pricing was completely ridiculous. But you make a hell of a point that this go round, you don't have the leverage that you had back in that time period, the credit default swaps. I mean, if you showed up, and I'm not going to make a joke, but it's funny. If you showed up with a paid cell phone bill, you could probably borrow $600,000 to buy a house in Los Angeles. So true. And I looked at some of these mortgage companies. I really did. And I'm starting to look at these applications, and I'm like, this family can't eat for 12 months. There's no money left. They got the television, they got the boat, they got the house, they got the whole shooting match. And this time around, I concur with what you said, that there's not as much leverage, which means that there's more equity. And the more equity that's there, the longer that a homeowner can withstand this situation with the COVID-19. I think it's a hell of a point.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know with everything, but I'm leaning more towards this not being as bad. But then you have people like Ray Dalio saying, this is terrible. This is bad. We're going to go into something worse than what the recession was in 08, 09 type thing. So when I'm telling you that I don't think it's going to be as bad, I'm also being as optimistic as I can be, right? So that's just my nature, though, Frank.
Yeah. Well, it should be every real estate person's nature. We're the internal optimists, Tristan. So that is something that ultimately, is a reality. Let me ask something. What are your feelings about the election? Where do you see the election today, and what do you see happening?
Well, I know that where we have it now currently, the way that it's affected the real estate market as a whole has benefited real estate agents. That's just a fact. So the way that most real estate agents and the economists that I've talked to have told me, they said, look, if Trump remains in office, there's not going to be that big of a change in the real estate market, especially with what I just told you with the forbearance and also there are a few other stats that show that there are just less inventory as a whole on average. So if Biden wins, then that brings the wild card to me and to most people that are out there that understand what's happening. And that could change a lot of the dynamics that we just don't have control over. And then that's when the market starts changing. Does the interest rate go up eventually, even higher, where there's no more free money type thing? Who knows? But the way that it looks like right now, with the way that the White House handled COVID, it's not looking good for them, man. And I don't want to get super political, but what do you think about the whole process?
Well,
right
I've covered that on the show over and over and over. I mean, I think that the Trump administration downplayed the whole coronavirus issue. And then what happened is that it backfired and it blew up in their face.
Yeah,
I
totally
believe that the Democrats now, Tristan, are making an incredibly bad decision about cities like Portland, cities like Seattle, cities like New York City. I think that the lawlessness factor, now it is I say it every show, Tristan, it is our right in the First Amendment to peacefully protest. And it's a big part of us being Americans. It's a big part of us in our Constitution. But when you take that and you then see some of the lawlessness that really protests turn into riots by anarchists and everything else, and it's embraced, if you will, by Democratic mayors and people in Washington, I think that could even the scales a little bit from the standpoint that Trump really did blow the coronavirus scenario. And you see that he's pivoted. Now, we have information that tells us that he watches this show, Tristan, that he's in the Oval Office and he's watching the show. And so we're trying to advise him. And he took our advice that he pivoted. And now we're trying to get to Biden, who's in the basement. And so he's laying on the Chase Lounge. He's got televisions everywhere, probably got a bottle of scotch. So we're trying to figure out now how we get to him, because we're not going to become political on this show. So we want to give the advice, as you can tell, to both sides. And you say?
Well, man, look, I think number one is let's be as logical as possible. Get as much information, which is what our team does, right? You do this. When you're running America, you're running a business, right? And you have to be as, and Ford said this, right? Henry Ford, way back in the day. He said, the number one secret to success is being able to see both sides, right? And I think that's missing in the political world that we live in, unfortunately, where, Frank, I can talk to you, and if you disagree with me, I'm not going to berate you. I'm just going to say, you know what, that's interesting. Tell me more about that, because I'd like to learn more. And I think that's the one thing that's missing in politics right now, to be able to move together to solve problems like COVID-19, right? It's just, it's missing. And it hurts me, because I love our country, man.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, Tristan. Let's cover another subject.
Let's go.
I covered the situation with the national debt pretty heavily on the last couple shows. And we are at $23,700,000,000,000 and climbing. And now they're talking about another event of funding. So let's assume that's another $1 trillion, okay? And I'm not saying that people don't need the help, but my contention on this show has been that there has to be a happy median between opening up our country and doing it safely. You take a look at Texas, Florida, Georgia, Arizona. Guess what? They did it terribly. They didn't pay attention to the details. The protocols were not there. And it turned out to be a big mess. Now, cities and states like New York City and New Jersey cities and northeastern cities, that is Chicago, that has really kind of held back. We've got to get the country open, but we've got to do it in a way that is planned. I'll give you an analogy. I was in the NBA. I was a minority owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. And
I remember.
The NBA has really done it right. They created a bubble. They really test every day. They watch the restrictions of players and what they do. And they really got off to a pretty good start. All right, let's go over to the other side. Baseball is a mess. It is a complete mess. Six teams now have had to suspend their season because the protocols are not in place. So I think this is all about how we open up and what are the protocols. What do you see?
Well, first of all, you're right on. The U.S. debt is just an unsustainable path. It's just, there's no way they keep on doing what they're doing with the aging population and the rising healthcare costs. It's just not going to happen. So I think they really need to take a step back and say, going back to what I said at the beginning, which was, I think we all need to get used to, as a country, city, state, how to move forward with this disease, because it's not the last time this is going to happen. Right. We have to have a protocol that says, how do we function as a country to continue to move our economy forward? How does that look like? Right. Because as soon as we get comfortable with the right process, whatever that is, that's when we start winning, because we're losing right now, man.
Yeah. And you know, I've mentioned many times, Tristan, on this show, we're not France and we're not Italy. Now, I love both those places. I spend time in both those places every year. I have family in both those places. But their form of government is different from ours. They're much more socialized. And so, therefore, they can do more for the business person and the out-of-work worker. We're a capitalist society. That's the American dream. But at some level now, we've got to balance this. I'll give you two more stats on the debt. And I used this the other show. I think it was last show. We take in tax receipts and all other categories, $3.5 trillion a year. Guess what? That's the good news. You know what the bad news is? We spend $4.4 trillion a year. So we're running $900 billion deficits every year. That's added to the 23 trillion 700 million, soon to be 25 trillion. You hit the point. You can't pay it back. So now, am I worried about the economy at some level when people start focusing on this? Yes, I am. Am I worried about interest rates when people start focusing on this national debt? Yes, I am. So we've got to be able to come to some understanding that we can't keep spending money at this level. Because if we do, we're going to end up broke. If you did that in your household, Tristan, you wouldn't be able to survive.
No, I agree, Frank. You know, that brings up something in my mind that we should be doing as a country. We should be gathering the brightest minds like you, Frank, and other people that run businesses that are looking forward to how to function in this economy with everything that's happening, right? And get them together and say, how is it that you're functioning right now? How is your business working in these other countries? What are you looking to do? How can we do that as a country here? And I don't know that that's happening at a very high level, almost like a really intimate mastermind type thing, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of politics, you've hit it. When you put politics in the middle and you get people polarized, Tristan, you know better than anybody. If you're not operating from here, you're never going to get anything done. I can tell you in my life, my business life and my personal life, try doing this with your wife and see how far you get. Okay? See how far you get. Okay? Everything in your life has got to be, dialed in at this level where you talk to people just like you mentioned. All right, how do people become members of your organization? How do they do it?
Yeah, just go to labcodeagents.com. We have a website, or follow me on Instagram, which is Tristan.Ahumada. Pretty easy to follow me. And you can find me anywhere on social media. Just type up my name and just hit me up if you have any questions.
Well, all the To Be Frank, show watchers and people that are tuned into our show, follow Tristan. He's got a great platform. You can learn a lot. And, it's really going to help enlighten you on what's going on in the real estate world as well as the general world. And it'll be very helpful to you and your businesses and your personal life. So, Tristan, it's really great to have you on today. I look forward to coming on to your show. So you call our producers and we'll figure out how we do that. I'd like to do that soon. And so
Definitely.
I really appreciate it, and have a good time in Malibu this afternoon, sitting out there and looking at the beautiful beach.
I love it. You have fun over there too, man. I know you were in the pool, so have fun.
Yes, that's right. I'm going back. So thank you, Tristan. Have a great day.
Thank you.
What a great interview. And, he's got a huge organization. As I mentioned, 300,000 members. And we're happy that we've been able to get our show to those members. And but what a nice guy, what a great guy. And, it goes to show that there are all kinds of businesses that really excel during this COVID-19 mess that we're in. So his business is one of them. In closing, we sit back again at the end of every show and we try to cover things from the current events to interesting topics to all the pieces. Politics has got to get straight in this country. We have got to get to a point that this canyon-wide divide of people that don't talk to each other, that call each other names, that do all the things that we teach our children you do not do. They do it in Washington. And I'm not singling out anyone, not singling out any party. Everybody's guilty of this. And we got to try to figure out, how we can get through these things. God forbid, is this how we're going to act if we happen to have a war down the road with China or someone else? Is this how we're going to operate? Because you can't win. A country divided gets beat by a country united 10 out of 10 times. And our country is so divided. Gets back to the whole thing about, World War II and the mess that was our country during, World War II and the aftermath. But our country was connected. We were all one country. In today's world, because of the media, because of identity politics, because of this rash ideology that we see everywhere, we're divided. And we're all Americans. Everybody has to understand that, is that we are all Americans. So I'm hoping that at some point we can get there where we can be comfortable to have discussions amongst ourselves that don't get to the point to where we have to completely beat the hell out of the other side and call the other side names and become so ideological that we can't literally see what's in front of us. That's my hope. As I mentioned, and I'll close with this, that 90 days out to the election, it's about 90 days, okay? This is going to get worse before it gets better. So let's just all buckle up. I'm really, really happy to have been your host today. You can reach us again at the 2B Frank Show YouTube, the 2B Frank Show Twitter, the 2B Frank Show LinkedIn, and the 2B Frank Show Facebook. And we're also on the 2bfrankshow.com. So I'm Frank Zaccanelli. We're signing off today. I hope everyone has a healthy day and a happy day, and we'll see you on Thursday. Everybody take care.